Shawna and Jody here with Real Sisters, Real Talk.
We're glad to have you joining us as we talk about growing in our faith with God. Hello and welcome back to Real Sisters, Real Talk. I'm Jody and I'm here with my sister Shawna, and we're excited to tell you that today this podcast is a year since we launched our podcast. So super exciting, fun to celebrate that. And it's also right before Mother's Day. And what a fun and special day it is to celebrate mothers. Shawna and I share a mama, and she is incredibly special to us. And so I just wanted to start the episode today with telling a quick story about mom. And Shawna, I know you remember this story.
Okay,
but
I'm ready.
Our mom, yep, let's do it. Our mom is, I think if you met her, you would think she was a little more quiet. She loves to be a part of a group, but she's not going to be the person drawing attention to her. So it's just kind of her personality. And she, her and dad raised 4 girls and we were a lot. And she just was, has great joy when she's with us and stuff. We laugh so hard. And so she's just a ton of fun. But I don't know that people really get to see her personality too quick unless they really know her. And so I just want to tell a quick story about when we were young.
Yeah.
We used to camp all the time with our cousins and close friends, and we would go water skiing. And so we would tow the boat behind our camper. And there was this one time our dad never traveled. I think in my entire life, I remember 2 times that he had to travel for work. And this was a holiday weekend, and it happened to be one of the times he had to travel. And Shawna, I don't even remember. I mean, you were maybe 6 or 7 and I was maybe 10 or 11 kind of age. I think we were pretty young. And so mom decided she was going to take us 4 girls camping with our whole camping group, because there's lots of families that were there. And so there were a lot of people to help and, help her get set up and stuff, but she wasn't going to take the boat. So we just had the camper. So it was a 4th of July weekend. And we were with our cousins, the Prosts, and Jeff and Joel. And I think, I'm not even sure if Wanda and Twyla were there. They might have been married by then. But I remember there was this group camping near us that decided to celebrate all night long. They were loud, screaming, like none of us could sleep because they were so loud all night long. So we would always get up really early, like even when it was just starting to get light, and we would get the boats in the water. So we would move to the shoreline where we were going to stay. So our mom went to our cousins, Jeff and Joel, and said, we were all packed up, ready to go over to the shore. She pulled the camper out into the little road of the campground, ready to drive away. And she ran over to our cousins and said, can I have some of your firecrackers? And they're like, sure, Annie Joe. So they hand her a pack. Do you not remember this?
Not at all.
Oh my goodness. We were maybe younger. So they hand her a pack of firecrackers. She has the truck running, the camper running. All of us are sitting inside the camper. She has the driver door open and she runs to the front of this group's tent, and she lights a whole pack of firecrackers and runs back to the truck and jumps in, and off we drive. And you see the tent fly open. This is a side of our mom that you would never see, and our cousins can attest to this. I'm sure that Joel remembers this story and would be able to tell you vividly. But yes, this is a fun memory of our mom. She is spunky. A lot of times she's kind of the instigator. Truthfully, she would instigate us doing things at times.
Oh, yeah.
She's a kick.
Oh, yeah. Mom's feisty. So here's the thing. I remember her instigating getting me to paint Dad's toenails while he was taking a nap on a Sunday afternoon with like bright red. And when my dad took a Sunday afternoon nap, like he was out. And so I'm like, I think she gave me money. I was like, yeah, I'll do it for money for sure. So I painted Dad's toenails red, and I remember he woke up from his nap and looked down at his feet. There's no big reaction, no nothing. I just remember him calmly saying, nobody gets their allowance until this is off. That was it. That was the end of the story. And I was like, I've already been paid. I'm good. But it was mom's idea.
Yeah. I also remember, so mom and dad coached and managed our softball teams all the way through. We played for a local Bobby Sox league. I mean, we started playing softball. I was on my first team at 5 years old. Sean, I think you were too. And so that was our thing. We played softball.
Yep.
And so they would coach. I mean, other than our high school teams, they coached us all the way through. And mom was always the manager. And I remember we went to um, a pizza place for a team party, and I vividly remember there was a like a CVS or a market right by the Straw Hat Pizza place that we went to, and I remember a couple of the girls were like in the parking lot just goofing off, and they were playing with this cart, and mom went and climbed inside the cart, and they were running through the parking lot pushing her in the cart. And I remember I was so worried that she was going to get hurt, but like legit, whose mom does this kind of stuff?
I
And so
love that.
she was a kick. She is a kick.
She
She's
is
a
a
ton of fun.
hoot. She's a hoot.
Yep.
And these, these stories about mom have reminded me, I'm sure you have stories, Jodes, of a mama bear story of my own. And I'm wondering maybe if I'm a little bit more like my mother than I realized I am out of this mama bear story. But when we lived in Arizona, we lived in a cul-de-sac, and it was a big round cul-de-sac. There were 20 homes and lots of children on this cul-de-sac. So we had one of these neon guys that sat like, the Running Man thing that you can like sit up and with a little red flag in his hand, that we've got kids, so be careful. Well, the kids played in the street like it was their playground because everybody had kids and everybody, we knew that this is what happened in the cul-de-sac. So I was sitting watching the kids play. I was sitting like on the driveway near the end of the driveway, and I think I was crocheting. Which is kind of a funny image of me if you know me. But anyway, I think that's what I was doing at the time. And so I had the needle in my hand, little crochet needle, and I was crocheting something. And a white van, unmarked van, came just tearing down the cul-de-sac and made a U-turn, screeched. When I saw him coming, I heard him coming, I yelled at the kids and to get out of the street, and they all listened. Praise Jesus. They got out of the street and nobody was harmed at all. But I when the van came close enough to our house, it started screeching and it started turning because we were at the very end of the cul-de-sac. I just flew out of my chair and went storming after this van. And all of a sudden the van screeches to a halt. And I turned to the kids without even stopping walking. Like I didn't stop my pace at all. I turned to the kids and I said, get in the house and lock the door. And I start charging after this guy who's driving this van. And he gets out of the van and he starts charging towards me. And I'm like, oh no, this is not good. Like, I don't know what is about to go down, but I am not backing down at all. I am not slowing my pace. I am going after this guy. We're going to meet in the middle of the cul-de-sac. It's like one of those Western, kind of Western ghost town movies. Like here it comes, the showdown. So, anyway, he gets within like, I don't know, 20 feet of me or something. He's charging at me. I'm charging at him. I have no idea what's about to happen. And he goes, ma'am, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. I know there are kids that play in this cul-de-sac and I should have known better. I just wasn't thinking. I'm so sorry. And it was like, whoa, because I was all mama bear. Like I was so worked up and I had no idea what was going to happen. I thought this could be the end of me, but there's something about
You're going to throw down.
There is something about getting fierce for our kids and protecting our kids.
Have I ever told the story on the podcast about when Tyler was in swimming lessons?
I don't
Do you recall
believe so.
that at all?
No. I don't
okay.
Think so.
If I've told this before, bear with me, but when Tyler, my son, was in very, very young, he was in swim lessons. Lauren was in swim lessons as well. We took swim lessons at this park as they got older. We took them at this park, and their rules were that the moms they could come in and drop their kid off at the lesson with the teacher, and then you had to walk back out and around and outside the fence. And the fence was this really tall fence. Like there was no climbing over it because it was an outdoor pool. And so, they had to have super high fences, but they wanted the moms outside of the reach of their kids. And it was a huge, like Olympic sized pool. Well, that already bothered me because, I can't get to my kids. Right. But, so Lauren was maybe, I don't know, 4 and Tyler was 7 because she was in her own swim lesson as well. And Tyler was they were both really strong swimmers. That was always important to us. We had a boat, and so it was important to us. We put them in swim lessons very, very young. And so he was a super strong swimmer, but there was one stroke that he was weaker on. And I mean, he could swim across the entire pool with most of his strokes, but there was literally one stroke that he was weaker on. So I'm on outside the fence, and I'm just kind of watching both the kids, and they have a lifeguard on and everything up. And I see Ty get all the way across the pool, and he's about 5 feet from the wall, and he has run out of steam because he's in his weakest stroke.
No. Yeah.
And I see him start to go down, and I see his head pop up, and he's gasping for air, and he goes back down. And I look at his teacher, and his teacher, who was excellent, is looking to the side watching something else as I'm watching my son bob up and down. So I watch for a couple of seconds, and that mama bear, and I scream out loud, and I point, I said, he needs help. And I pointed to him, and the instructor threw he had like a little floaty, threw that to the side and just took off after Tyler. And he got to him. Tyler was fine, sputtering a little bit, but
but you're fine. Still emotional telling the story. It was intense.
I was a hot mess. So all these moms are lined up, all outside the wall. They've all watched this happen, and I am pacing back and forth. I am dealing with all of my mom emotions. Like, I was a mess. So thankfully they had a good 20 minutes left of the lesson. And so they finished out the lesson, and I'm trying to stay calm, and I'm trying to stay calm. Like, I know I have to handle this in a good way for my kids, as well as, deal with what just took place. And so, knowing I couldn't really control my emotions really well at that moment, I wasn't ready to talk to the instructors. So when the lessons were over, I grabbed the kids. I said, let's go home. And so we went home, and I was sick to my stomach. I couldn't eat. Nothing. Like, I was so upset about this whole thing. And so that night I was talking with Johnny about it, and I was crying. I said, I can't take them back. Like, how do I take them back and let them go into swim lessons? But I knew that the right decision as a mom, teaching my children how to face hard things, trusting God that He's got them, was to bring them back. And so I didn't wrestle any of this out in front of the kids. The only thing I said to the kids was, boy, that was a little bit scary, wasn't it, Ty? That was just because it's your weakest stroke. And he said, yeah, Mom, I couldn't make it those last few feet. And I said, honey, you know what your strong strokes are. So if that ever happens, just turn to he was a rule follower. And so,
sure.
But I said, just turn to a strong stroke and do that one. And so we just kind of talked that through, but inside I was a hot mess. And so it'd be interesting to hear their version of how I handled it. So then, prayed, didn't sleep that night, prayed. We knew that I had to bring them back. And so the next day we just went through our normal routine. I brought him back, and I dropped Lauren off at her instructor. And then I walked him over to his instructor, and his instructor, you could just see, was like, So I just kind of waved. I said, can I talk to you a second? And he walked over, and I said, what happened yesterday was rough, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I am so sorry. I should have had him. I said, I'm sure you learned a lesson. I'm sure you will never take your eyes off a kid again. I said, you need to know your students. You need to know what their strong strokes are and their weak strokes. That's Ty's weak stroke. And so you need to keep your eye on your students when he's a young kid.
Sure.
And he's like, yes, ma'am. And I'm like, great, thank you. And I turned around and walked away.
And I'm sure you were polite about it, but that had to be a come to Jesus moment for that boy right there.
Oh, right. I think he thought I was going to just rip him apart. But I also am modeling this out to my kids. And so anyway, I share that story because, one, as a mom, I was just dying inside. Like, I was broken by the fact that I had to bring Tyler back and put him in the care of someone else again. But most importantly, my job as a mom is to raise my kids in a way that honors and glorifies God, that helps them to become stronger, that helps them to face hard things head on instead of running from them. And so everything in me said, tuck and run. Like, just, like you've talked about turtling before, like, turtle those kids in and do not let anybody touch them. Everything in me screamed to that. But as a mom, I knew I had to make the hard decision, and I had to move in a way that would help grow my kids the best way possible and model to them what it means to do hard things. And really there's a huge responsibility that we have as parents, mom or dad. I mean, we're celebrating Mother's Day, but we have a huge responsibility in how we walk out this life, how we allow our kids to live in this world and teach them what it means to be strong and to be brave and all those things. And I think one of the other things that I just really over and over again, and I could give you example after example of one of the things that I've learned as a mom is that there are so many times when God is doing something in my kids or was doing something in my kids' lives that I wanted to be inserting myself into. And there were so many times where I felt like God said, just do back up. And I'm working with them. I'm showing Tyler that I've got him. I'm his protector. And it's like, okay, okay. So there's just so much. Yeah, that mama bear is a real thing, but we have a real responsibility to train our kids up
Mm.
in the hard things as well. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
mhm,
parenting can I mean, parenting, ah, as far as, like, drawing me close to the Lord, I remember when
mhm.
I gave birth to my oldest daughter, Bryn, the first moment that we were alone, like, my husband had gone home to sleep, there wasn't any medical staff in the room, they just left me with this child. My child, right? But I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure? All by myself." Um, but in that moment, I was holding her, and I just remember looking at her little face, and I started praying over her, just all the things I wanted for her, and I'm like, "Lord, make her independent. Make her strong. Help her to know who you are. Help her to know her identity in Christ. And God, help her to be a strong woman of faith. Grow her to be somebody who stands up for the underdog." Like, all these things started to pour out of me that I didn't even know were in me. And I spoke this prayer. I don't even know how long I was praying, but it turned out to be one of those prayers where just like big sobs, ugly cry,
Yeah,
face is
yeah,
soaking wet kind of thing. And got through all of my words, and I had really just poured my heart out before the Lord and made all my requests known to him. And in the quiet of the moment when all my words were done and it was just kind of like the silence was kind of pronounced, in that moment he said, "Be it."
yeah,
And I thought, oh crap. If the only way that my prayer gets answered is that I model it for her, then it won't happen, you know? But
yeah,
I felt like it was God's in his in the kindest way giving me the greatest challenge I'd ever had in my life to model for her all the things that I wanted for her. I don't think I ever wanted to be anything more than in that moment to be the mom that she would need to become all the things that I'd prayed that she would become.
yeah. There's a quote, they use it in the Vantage Point 3 curriculum that I talk about a lot, and I'm not positive about the who to credit that quote to, but they were at a conference. I think Rob Lowe was at a conference, and somebody asked this speaker, famous speaker, what would be your best advice in parenting? And he paused for a moment and he responded, the greatest gift you can give to your kids is to be a growing parent. Like we always need to
Mm,
be growing in our walk with God. And if we are always leaning into our relationship with God and not just checking things off a list, but growing in our walk with God, that's the greatest gift we can give to our kids. What a great challenge to parents, grandparents, spiritual parents.
mhm.
If one of the things about Mother's Day is when we enter into a holiday like this, there's there's sometimes some pain
Yeah.
that goes with this holiday. There's some people who have lost their mom, and that's a really hard thing. There are some people, some women who desperately want to be a mom, and that gift has not been given to them physically, and that is a very painful thing. There's some moms who have lost their children, and I cannot say enough. I am so sorry that you have done, because that's just so backwards from the way that we want that to happen. And so I'm so sorry that you have faced that hurt, and wound. And so there can be a lot of grief that comes into this holiday as well. Um, but I do want to mention, if you are a a woman who has not had the gift of having children, you are still a spiritual mom to someone. So model out what that means. Walk with someone who's coming up behind you and wanting to grow in their walk with God. Mentor, love on people. Let's be spiritual parents too. That's an important part of our walk with the Lord. And just want to encourage you in that too.
Yeah, the spiritual parenting aspect of things, I didn't know that I quite had an understanding of what that was until I was in a small group. I was leading a group of women, small group of women, and something came up where we were praying over one of the women, and I felt spiritual attack on her very specifically in the moment that we were of what we were praying into. And I'm telling you, I there was a part of me that kind of battled it because I felt like I don't want to be I don't want to take something that's not mine right here, but I just had such a strong sense that I needed to get up from where I was sitting. We were all sitting in couches like in a living room, but I had to get up from where I was sitting and stand in front of her. And it was, enemy, if you're going to come
Mhm.
at her, you're going to have to go through me. And I think that was a realization for me in that moment, that God had put me in a position to be a spiritual mother to her. That's what was happening as we met together week after week. And as we were looking at scripture and as we were processing what we were learning in the faith, that God had allowed me to be a spiritual mom in her life. And I'm telling you, there are women all around us who need to be reparented in their adulthood, in their walk with the Lord. And it's
Mhm.
sometimes it's because of the brokenness that they come from. I have a really good friend. Man, I know she wouldn't be mind. Yeah, I won't share her name just because I didn't ask for her permission. We'll just call her,
Yeah.
I don't know, we'll call her Kaylee. Okay, so Kaylee grew up in a house where she was neglected, she was abused, there was trauma, there was addiction, all kinds of things going on in her home. And she had a moment where, as in her adulthood, she was walking through the healing of all the things of her childhood that she just didn't even know weren't normal. Because you don't know when you're a little girl if it's your normal, it's just normal. But as God was
Yeah.
healing her heart and she was becoming aware of these things, she, an adult woman who was walking with her through it, one day on just a very, very difficult day, showed up at her house and sat down on the couch next to her and just held her while she cried. She kind of
Yeah.
took her head, and just kind of held onto her head, and she ended up laying with her head on her lap and laying out on the couch, and the gal just stroked her hair while she cried. And it's like she just needed a spiritual mama to be there in
Yeah.
that moment.
Right. And what a very important role that is, to be a spiritual mom. And what an encouragement, because if you're walking with the Lord, you can be that to somebody. And so, yeah, if we can encourage you in any way, to live that out. Even, I mean, even Shauna, like, our kids are grown up. You never stop being a mom. Your role shifts. It changes. Our relationship with the kids change. And so, but we parent differently. Our mom will always be our mom. She is, roles change and stuff, but she is such an important part of our lives. And I'm so grateful for her. But yeah, it's a beautiful thing that we can actually be spiritual moms as well
Mhm.
and meet such a great need. And I think you brought up another really big point. In there are some of the hurt that comes into this holiday is, also those who did not have great moms, and so there's woundedness and hurt that comes in that as well, and that it's real, and we just want to name it and recognize it too. And
Yeah.
God brings healing in that. He can
Yeah.
bring healing.
Absolutely. And yeah, he brings people into our lives to be different things. Jesus with hands and feet that we need at different moments too. You were talking about the different seasons of parenting a little bit. You mentioned just having adult kids, and it's so different from having little kids. But I actually was talking with Steve Norman of Winning at Home yesterday, and he said, our role as parents, though it looks different in different seasons, is always bless and release. Bless and
Yes.
release. Bless, whether they're going off to kindergarten or you're leaving them in the nursery for the first time, or they live on the other side of the world, they're adults, they're getting married, you're sending your daughter off into marriage soon. Like, it's
Mhm.
bless and release, bless and release. That's our role as parents. And sometimes that release part is really, really hard, and we overstep our bounds and we get too involved in areas where we need to be releasing. And that's just another hard part of parenting.
Yeah. But it is our job to raise them up and set them free to, I mean, still be
Right.
in relationship with them, but our goal is to raise people who can become adults who can actually handle life and make decisions. And so part of our job is training them up, and so that means those little pieces of releasing, and it comes all the way along, like, I mean, from when you have them at home and then you have to bring them to preschool, and then it's each step is that releasing and letting them go. I One of the things I just want to speak to, if you listening have a real young family, I remember when our kids were young, and I just remember thinking, like when I had them at home, I can't imagine sending them to school. How am I going to send them to school and be away from them for that long? And then by the time it was time to start school, God had prepared my heart, and I was
Mm.
ready to start them into that next chapter and see them flourish and grow. And, leaving elementary school to middle school, I remember feeling that same thing, like, God, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to let them go into this next phase. And by the time it was time to release them, I was ready. God had prepared my heart, and we were able to let go. And I would say the same thing. Like, if you had asked Johnny 10 years ago about Lauren getting married, he would have said, he truly would have answered you, she can start dating after she's married when she's 35. Like, literally would have been his answer.
Yeah.
Um, but the truth is, we're so ready for Lauren to marry Austin and start this life together. And we're so excited for them because God has prepared us for this releasing. And I feel like mom and dad did a great job of when we got married too, just releasing us to live our lives. And we're still in relationship with our kids, deep relationship with our kids, but we also want to release them. Quick story. I remember I was traveling one time, and I started talking to a young man in line. We were waiting to get onto the plane, and I was traveling, I think, to seminary, just to Sioux Falls for school. And we just struck up a conversation. He was a young gentleman, and he asked me about my family, and I told him about my kids and that Tyler was going to be going to Germany to study abroad. And he said, "Is that hard?" And I said, "Sure, it's really hard, but this is what I raised him to do. I
Sure.
raised him to be an adult that he could make good and wise decisions and live for God no matter where he is." And so this is what I raised him to do. And he just said, what an interesting perspective to hear from a parent, not his parent. But it's easy to say that, it's a lot harder to do it.
Sure.
But it is our job.
Yeah.
We need to release, love and
Yeah.
release. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. Bless and release. Hey, real
Bless
quick,
and release. Yeah.
we're gonna wrap up here in just a minute. So this is kind of like the final thought, but I just am curious if you've got what's your best parenting advice? Just for this moment, not like for all time. I don't want to make it that big of a deal, but like at this moment, what comes to mind as mama advice you would give today?
Okay, so this is just in the moment.
Sure. Completely unscripted. I
Not sure
didn't
I would.
say that I was going to
Yep.
ask this question in advance. So,
Yeah. I would say my best parenting advice, aside from raising your kids in the Lord, reading scripture, modeling out what it means to live for God in front of them, okay, I'm going to say two things. I would say
okay.
bring them in on the journey. Don't protect them from every hard thing, but but take those teachable moments and bring them in on the journey, because this is how they learn how to grow and how to make wise decisions as they grow up. And so allow them to fail a little bit and, be there to help coach them through it, but bring them in on the journey. Don't hide the hard things from them. And the second thing I would say is be a really good listener.
That's
When
good.
your kids are ready to talk, I tried really hard to set things aside and give them my attention, because I want to be the one. I want Johnny and I to be the ones that they come to when they need to process something out. And so I always told them, I'll answer you honestly. If you ask me a question, I will answer you. And because I wanted to be that safe place for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so be a good listener. Be available to your kids. I think that's really important. So how
Yeah.
about you? What would be your best parenting advice?
Well, out of what you just shared, I was reminded of when my kids were little, like very little. Honesty was really important to me. And so,
Mhm.
if we were going to go to the doctor, it's, the kindergarten shots, that 5 year, all right, we're going to go to the doctor and you're going to get shots and it's going to hurt. It's not going to be pleasant, but it's actually not going to last either. So
Yeah.
you totally can get through this. You're going to be fine. And I just remember like that was really important to me, that they didn't ever feel deceived by me, that like, oh, we're just going to go to the doctor. And I didn't tell them. And they were like, felt distrusting towards me because I didn't give them the whole truth. So it kind of lines up with what you were saying. But I remember when Haven was, 5 and we took her to the doctor for the shots, and, they explained, you're going to get some shots today. And they're kind of like looking at me and I'm like, you can tell her, you can talk to her, have a conversation with my daughter. I know she's 5, but I would prefer that you have a conversation with her. She can take it, so they tell her. And it was so funny. The nurse comes in with the shots and lays the stuff on the little, the little bed, little table or whatever. And Haven rolls up a sleeve and leans in. Go ahead, do what you gotta do.
I love it.
But that was one thing that was really important that has always been important to me, that there's honesty between us. And then the other thing, I mean, they're very similar to what you shared, Jodes, but the other thing is just I remember seeing I don't remember how old I was when the Lord gave me this vision. It was a gift from him, but we've talked about this on the podcast before. It was Jesus in front of me with his arms extended to me, inviting me to come to himself. And my computer was on the right. It was all white. Like we weren't like in the grass or anything. It was just like all white. But the computer was on the right, the phone's ringing on the left. All these things were vying for my attention. And I was accepting the invitation to walk closer and closer to Jesus. But as I got closer to him, the things that were vying for my attention got more and more important. And the closest thing to Jesus as I came to him was my family down on the right. Dan was down on one knee and he kind of had Haven. She was standing up, but he was, right behind her. And the other 3 kids were standing right there. And Haven, my youngest, actually started to kind of toddle towards me and walk towards me. And Dan gently, with a smile on his face, kind of like pulled her back and said, nope, let mama go. And I never took my eyes off of Jesus, even though I could see all these things in my peripheral vision. I kept walking towards him. And I think the message there was, love your kids with all your heart, love your husband with all your heart. Fully throw yourself into the things that life presents for you. But always, 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 always keep your eyes fixed on Jesus and have him be the first and most important thing. And keep growing in your relationship with him. Keep making him the priority, even if and even when that means that your husband has to wait or that your children have to wait. Always, always, always have God be your most important, most precious relationship, and make it a priority to spend time with him, even in the midst of the crazy. And there is a way to do that. But yeah, just keep pursuing him.
Such a great word.
I think that's all the time we have for today, but we just want to wish you, in whatever season of life you are in, a very, very happy Mother's Day. And God has good plans for you. If your heart's desire is to be a mom and you're not experiencing that right now, we will pray that you get to experience the joy of that, and also that you can, and I'm not saying this in any kind of a flippant way, but you can find that Jesus is enough in what you're walking through right now. So we serve a real God, and he really does love you.